Okay, I'm going to start.
Okay, sorry.
As Professor Bob here knows, anybody who interrupts me gets a F. So I'm supposed to talk about food and baseball because I'm a food historian. And Ellie said I should bring these in case anybody wants to buy one at a serious discount. This is the latest hot one. I've written a couple of books on history about this. And I'll sell it to you really cheap if you want. So I won't go on about my brilliant credentials. I'm not counting Eastern Illinois, where we had a revolution that threw out the president, partly thanks to him. Anyway, it's too long a story to tell. People have always gone to public events, and you have to eat at a public event. Now, my favorite historical version of that is the Monty Python movie called The Life of Brian. Have you all seen it? Where they're at the gladiatorial arena, and the vendors are going around selling lark's tongues, fish ears, and it's really fun. But anyway, public events always have food to come. So if we're talking about early baseball, what did they eat? If we're talking about 1858 thereabouts, what did they eat? Well, they brought picnic baskets because picnics were the big thing, and they had been since the 17th century. The word itself, I'm just going to say a few things about picnics. The word picnic is French. We're not sure what the origin is. There's a major debate about this because it doesn't appear in etymological dictionaries. Early ones in the 1700s, and then suddenly it appears. And it just means sort of a melange of foods that people eat, leftovers, and inside, and then later they take them outside. So the word appears later on. Then it becomes a big thing, and it becomes a big social event, starting in France, and then moves to England. It's picnic. If you go to France, you'll see signs all over the roadside. Picnic. If you're in France, you'll see those. And so the English call it. So since American food is largely English and German at the time, less so now, but it was then. So all the English folkways and foodways came over to America. So Americans are eating picnics. In 1842, Charles Dickens came to America. You should read his American Notes section, or his novel, Margaret Chuzzlewit, part of which is set in Southern Illinois. I couldn't stand it. They loved him. He was a big star, but you should read American Notes and laugh out loud at what he thought how crude America was, and how America's just full of Sharpies who want to prolong your money, and said terrible. I couldn't stand it. Anyway, he went to the prairie, went to Southern Illinois, and the prairie down the village by steamboat, and he had a picnic on the prairie, and he said, "It is a scene not to be forgotten, but scarcely one, I think, at all events as I saw it, to remember that we sat down to eat, and it was a plain picnic, which was roast fowls, buffalo tongue, which is usually boiled, or smoked, ham, bread, cheese, and butter, biscuits, champagne, sherry, lemons, and sugar for punch, and an abundance of raw ice." Which means that they packed up ice and took it with them. This is a big thing in earlier America before refrigeration. Ice was. So anyway, so that's what you would eat at a simple picnic. So the early baseball game, 1858, a game in Chicago, 1860 in Chicago, people would bring their picnic baskets out, stand or sit around, watch the game, and this is what they would eat. On the other hand, one of the most famous cookery books, and Miss Ellie knows this book by heart, is Mrs. Beeton's cookbook. She was an English lady who wrote the Book of Household Management. It's very famous, published in 1861. And she has a picnic in it. Not to be believed. Well, I'm just going to tell you a couple of things that you take that casual picnic. cold roast beef, cold boiled beef, 2 ribs of lamb, 2 shoulders of lamb, cold roast fowls, 2 roast ducks, 1 ham, 1 tongue, 2 veal and ham pies, 2 cookie pies, 6 medium lobsters. But it's cheesecake, desserts, puddings, plain pastries, biscuits, cheeses of all kinds, plum cakes, etc., etc. Homemade mustard, 3-quart bottles of ale, packed in hampers, ginger beer, soda water, and lemonade, 6 bottles of sherry, 6 bottles of claret, champagne, etc.
How many people is that?
Well, it's probably a lot. Now, Mrs. Beaton had servants to do all this, so it's a bit. So you can these, if you're picnics can be quite elaborate, and not just baseball games. At the first Battle of Bull Run, which as you know was near Washington, all the ladies came out from Washington and sat above to watch. I don't know about the way. There's a very famous photograph by Alexander Gardner. I don't know if you've ever seen it. You're doing Emeritus, right? You should. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's Antietam. And it's right at the galaxy. Soldiers standing by. No, it's a very famous photograph. Just Google it, Alexander. And they're placid ladies just sitting there eating things out of buckets. One soldier stirring with the band. Nobody's sure what that photo means. Whether it means people picnicking watching that battle, or whether it's an anti-war thing. You're watching the aftermath. The corpse is still, bones still in the fields. So picnics have all these. Speaking of corpses, I'm thinking about Cubs history. And I say that as a White Sox fan. Sorry. But originally a Brooklyn Dodger fan. I lived in Dodger, the 50s. Oh, it was terrible. Then I moved to Chicago to be a White Sox fan. Well, we can't begin to tell. It's as if the Bears moved out of town. All right. So what food and baseball games? Moving on after 1850. Baseball develops, as you know, it becomes a national game. Everybody's all excited. Again, Charles Stevens, H.M. Stevens, right? Sorry, Charles H.M. Stevens comes to America. He's an Englishman. And he worked in steel mills, and he's a young guy. And he goes to a ball game in Cleveland, and he sees that nobody can know who the players are. So his own mythology was he invented the scorpion. Of course, he didn't, but the guy Herbert did. But anyway, that's okay. But he perfected it, so that, and then began to sell them. So he made a huge business out of selling cards and ball games, and then he made this a national company. And then went into catering, and he became the major caterer in a number of ballparks, in particular polo grounds. And there's a myth about hot dogs. Yeah, we have to tell in a bit. It's one of the iterations of polo grounds, not the ones that we hate as Dodger fans. Growing up in New York, it was one before that, the smaller one. Anyway, he said. I've just seen the most exciting game ever invented by human beings. It's called baseball. It's the fastest game you could imagine. Well, I know. But this is before TV and commercials broke everything up. And before ball players stood around between pitches like for a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes. If Carl Fisk were catching 5 minutes. Do you remember Carl Fisk? My wife was here, you can talk to her afterwards. She was the broadcast, she was the director of those games. And she never got much. So Carl Fisk pitched it. Every molasses. She's still cursing. Anyway, so you can talk to her about it as she's outside. But at any rate, so baseball games. So how do we know what people ate at baseball games? Well, let me think. 1908, there's a song written by Jack Norworth and Gus Van Tilser, and it's called Take Me Up to the Ball Game, right? And buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care. Now, Norworth and Tilser had never seen a baseball game. Norworth finally saw one about 20 years later. Tilser wrote the music for it 30 years later. No, really, they were Broadway guys in their Tin Pan Alley, and Norworth, who was a very famous vaudevillian, saw a sign on the subway, baseball game at the Polo Grounds. So he thought, oh, nice song. So he didn't know what people ate at the ballpark. Did they eat Cracker Jacks and peanuts? Peanuts, they did, actually. And there's a second song, which was really sort of say, and that is a jingle. And it is written in 1975. I know you've all seen the commercial. It's for a car company. What is it? Baseball,
apple pie,
hot dogs, baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. It's one of the great commercials ever written, and it commemorates hot dogs. So the question is, what were they eating in ballparks at, say, the end of the 19th century and into the 20th century? Because hot dogs and baseball are intimately linked together, right? That's what that commercial means. And I believe everything that's said in the commercial. I think I'm an American, like you. So let me say this about peanuts. Peanuts are we're eaten everywhere. It's a legume. It's not a nut, so it's related like a potato. It's from Mexico. Migrated up to North America in the 18th century, and it's southern. It grows in southern regions. The biggest peanut growing area is, Georgia, right? I've been on those places. You can't believe it. It's huge fields with laser satellite guided tractors. No, I've been in them. I can't believe it. Whoa. And just tons of stuff. Anyway, but it came up and it was slave food. So it was certain because it was cheap, and southern plantation owners didn't want to pay to feed their people very much. So peanuts. And it began to spread to the north and appeared in northern cities a small way in the 1830s, and it was boiled. If you've never eaten boiled peanuts, have any of you eaten boiled peanuts? They're good, aren't they? You don't like them? They taste like potato. Yeah. So they're not like the roasted ones are quite different because they were. So, but in the South, anywhere you go in the South, you find boiled peanuts. If you're traveling around, they're all over the place. So they became popular because they're easy to make and they're pretty cheap. Then comes the Civil War. Union troops are in the South. They discover peanuts. There are a lot of them. The South was short on food during the Civil War, deliberately starved out by the North. It's a deliberate campaign, and it worked. I mean, there were food riots in cities like New Orleans and Atlanta and Richmond, particularly. No, seriously, women riot. If you can imagine women in skirts like this, ladies rioting, really tearing stores apart because they didn't have food. That was the Northern strategy. So they went to peanuts and ate a lot of peanuts rather than other things. And so the Union troops then there, either prisoners or otherwise, began to eat peanuts. And I want to remind you, there's a very famous drawing, illustration of Union soldiers playing baseball at Andersonville. Have you ever seen that? So anyway, just Google it, you'll find it. It's a very famous illustration. And so the Northerners brought the New York game, and probably the New York, not the Massachusetts one. New York rules down there, and then it spread all over the South quickly, and peanuts spread to the North, and there was a craze for peanuts. So in a woman named Mabel McIlvaine in the 1920s, classic do-gooder lady, wrote her memoir of her childhood growing up in 1850s Chicago, when the street was just a mud patch in the streets. And she says, we could go outside and there were vendors selling peanuts. So it was, mud patch Chicago, there was hardly anybody in it, they were selling peanuts. So that's one. So peanuts were sold everywhere, and they're popular. This is the one. Okay. In the shell, They were primitive roasters developed in the 1870s and 80s. They weren't very good. But a guy named Charles Kraig in Decatur, Illinois, opened a candy shop in the early 1880s, and he wanted to roast peanuts. He had a primitive roaster. It wasn't very good. So he invented it himself. And he thought, you know, I can invent this one. How about popcorn? Popcorn used to be made. It was not a big American food at all. American Indians didn't eat popcorn. It's a myth. They, if you want to make popcorn, you took this, dried dead corn, and you put it in a hopper and just put it in the fire. There was no real way to make it. So he said, why not? I can make a business out of this. Why don't I invent a roaster to do popcorn too? And he did. And in the 1880s, he improved one, and then perfected in 1893. Took it to the World's Fair, where it became a huge sensation. And it's a combination peanut and popcorn roaster. Formed the Charles Kraig's company, which still exists. It's the 5th generation of ownership. All the major commercial roasting machines are made by them in Chicago. Really. So you couldn't have popcorn until Kraig's invented this. It's a steam-powered portable one and then commercial ones. So it's after 1893 that it becomes popular that you have popcorn. So in the 1890s, there's a German guy, and they take popcorn and they put caramel on it. And it's kind of hard to put caramel on popcorn. You can try it. It'll, melts off. But they worked it. And they finally perfected it. And they began to sell it. And one of their salesmen, they had a shop down on State Street. State Street? Adams? Anyway, they perfected the technique for doing it. And one of the salesmen working for them, and it's a small shop, supposedly said, "This is good, this is a Cracker Jack." Meaning, isn't that good? And they said, "Oh, it's a good name. Cracker Jacks." So they're shown at the Columbian Exposition in 1893. And then it explodes, that business. And they begin to package it, and they begin to put toys in about 1908 or so. And so the classic Cracker Jack, so Cracker Jacks are sold at it's caramel popcorn. There are many kinds. If you go up to Chicago, you go to Garrett's, for example, popcorn. So you know what Garrett's is. And there are many others around the country who do the same thing. It's a candy, butter, popcorn, all kinds of different things in it. So ballpark food would be those things. Now what about hot dogs? Well, it's a long story. I normally give a 3-hour lecture on this book. So let me just. Hot dogs are sausages. They are brought by Germans. There isn't English, Irish, Scotch. They don't have a sausage culture. I mean, they make sausages, but it's not like German. It's center of their cuisine, one of the major centers of their cuisine. So Germans came to America in very great numbers in the 1850s, after 1848. I mean, there were a lot of Germans here before, but nothing like the 1850s, when you talk about 500,000 a year in the decades after starting with the 1850s. Monster. Of course, they brought their sausage culture with them, and everybody knew this. And when Germans settled in, they settled in towns, but they settled in cities mostly. And I can think of some. And they still have a touristic German. I've been to Schmitz, and but cities like Milwaukee, St. Louis, right? How do I know that there are Germans there? Budweiser, because Germans brought lager beer, soft fermented beer, and Americans drank ale before that, and mostly hard cider. I mean, hard cider was the drink. If you're at a baseball game in the 19th century, you were drinking hard cider before the Germans really changed the culture. By the 1880s and 90s, when you're drinking beer. So at any rate, they brought their sausages with them because you have to eat something with your beer. And Germans, when they settle in towns, Germans are very formal about things and organize things well. Every American from the 18th century who saw Germans settle in America said, it's amazing how well organized they are. Their farms are the best farms. I'm telling you, you should read journal after journal. People who came and said, oh, the Scotch and Irish and the Americans, they're so slovenly, the Germans. So they have to have their Sunday off, and they have to go to a beer garden, which is literally a garden. They went into the woods, they set up tables, and they had eat and drink and sang songs, like Germans like to do. And so they have beer, they have bread, they brought all their rye and other breads with them, and they brought their sausages. So people are eating these sausages. And pretty soon, everybody else who's in a city like Chicago says, hey, these are good, and German butchers make good stuff. So sausage culture takes to the streets and to restaurants, and to public events. I'm cutting a long story short. But and these sausages are different kinds. The Germans today, if you go to Germany, have at least 200 kinds of sausage for sale in shops all over. But the main ones are called, what do you think they're called? Frankfurters, right? Supposedly from Frankfurt, but it's not true. And what's the other kind? Well, brats are just generic meats from roasted, cooked brats. And what's the other kind? Wieners, which means Vienna, Wiener. So that's a Vienna sausage. It's a white sausage. So those two become, and Thuringers, which are bigger ones. Everyone is slightly different from the others. If you read sausage manuals, you won't believe it. Because you say, what's the difference between these sausages? It's like a quarter teaspoon of paste or something. And the proportions are different. But if you want to be a Wurstmeister, you want to work in the industry, you train 4 years in school. Then you apprentice for a long time. It's like serious stuff. So, but they brought these sausages with them, and so Wieners and Frankfurters, and then bologna, which is a German name, but the way they're made is very similar to Wieners. Those become interchangeable. They're not called hot dogs; they just call these things Frankfurters. So they take the streets. The most famous place where they are in public events, not baseball games yet. Nope. In Coney Island. Not yet, 1960. But I'm talking about 1870s, when the Germans in New York, they just discovered Coney Island. You know what that is, right? Brooklyn. Yeah. Me too. I remember steeplechase.
That was a funny place.
Oh, I remember it.
Fireworks on Tuesday nights. Every Tuesday night.
I remember my grandmother was so. Anyway, enough of that. So, and they roasted them. They had little open grills, and they took some from the local butchers. And in the 1870s, they began to put them on, because you can't eat the sausage without bread. So the Germans always ate bread, but Americans already are eating sandwiches like bread, because Americans eat fast. Everybody who ever came to America in the 19th century said, you know what the thing about Americans? They just eat. Somebody said, you know what it is? It's gobble, gulp, and go. Whoa. So sandwiches, a chef friend of mine once said, you know what the American's greatest contribution to world cuisine is? I said, what? He said, sandwiches. And gum, of course. Because we invented chewing gum. Emeritus. Not Wrigley. There's a butcher, a local baker who made buns, and we have records of the Brooklyn Eagle at the time. So they began putting them on buns, and this spread all over the place. So that's where at least the earliest mention we have of a special bun for them. May have been other places, we just haven't found it. So that's your walking around. It's a walking around food. It's very cheap. So originally, it's made by butchers, but then, with the rise of the great meat processors, like Armour and Swift, Mars, Hammond, later Wilson, Cudahy, in Chicago. Chicago is the center of the meat industry. Did you know that by 1900, Chicago supplied 80% of America's meat. Let me say it again. 80% of America's meat came from Chicago. They slaughtered, in the back of the yards, somewhere between 14 and 18 million animals a year. You know, it's not very big, right? Those, if you just do a map and go around there, it is unbelievable. So these guys began making cheap sausages, and cheaper than butcher sausages. And the factories that Armour and Swift invented, Armour particularly, Swift, were disassembly lines. The cattle would come in at the top, and the animals would be slaughtered brutally, and then broken down floor by floor until you got to the bottom. And at the bottom were all the leftovers. And the leftovers were the guts and other parts. And by now, by the 1870s, especially the 80s, new chopping machines invented in Germany were being brought over. They're called bull choppers. They're still in use now. Go to any sausage place, you will see bull choppers. All the commercial guys use them. But, much faster than they were then. And they chop everything up. You don't know what's in there. If you read The Jungle, right? A human being occasionally is in there, other things. And you stuff them in the cases. That work was done by women, cleaning those cases. Horrible work. So the animal, a pig cuts. So they can sell those really cheaply. And vendors can get them at the factory and take them out to the street, and you can sell them for a nickel. That's how cheap they were. Nickels meant a lot more in 1990 or 1900 than it does now, but it's still pretty cheap. So here are sausages that descend from these German ones, right? They are cheap. They are cheap. They are widely available, and they're sold at public events. Now, we don't know when they appear at ballparks because there are no, as far as anybody can tell, people are researching this. There are hot dog people researching this, not just yours truly, but others.
Judge Sager just out in the Columbus Clippers claims that Stevens created that.
That's a myth. That's a myth. You have to Okay, I'll tell you the story. It has to do with the name hot dog because it appears everywhere. It's still online on sites. There's no mention of sausages being sold in ballparks before around 1900. Now, I haven't. This guy at University of Missouri, Rolla, who wants the American Dialect Society, he's a very famous scholar, Gerald Cohen, and he and friends of his they wrote a book put together on the name hot dog, the origin of the name hot dog, which is really good. They only published it privately, and because I know them, and so I have them, and we correspond all the time, and nobody's ever found a mention of sausage before about 1900. It doesn't mean they weren't selling. In fact, I think they were, and the reason I think so is because the St. Louis Browns, now the Cardinals, right, which you Cub fans love, and were bought up by a beer brewer named Chris Von who was an amazing character. He's very famous, and he didn't know a damn thing about baseball, but he got out on the field, right? He owned this team. The only reason he owned the team was to sell beer. Because he could sell beer there. And he would get out in front of the stands and do a dance and cheerleading, right? He had no idea what was going on in the field, but he thought he was a real amazing character. I can't imagine he was not selling beer and sausages. He's a German brewer in St. Louis, but there's no evidence of it, and Professor Cohen and I have been back and forth with this many times. He says there's no evidence. I said, how could it not be? So clearly they're selling, we know they're selling their hot dog vendors in carts around ballparks before that in the 1890s and 1900s, but in ballparks they don't know. So here's the myth. And when you think about it, it's really easy to make. You grill these ready-made sausages. They're not fresh. They're already smoked in the factory. So, and they're cheap, and you can just cut them up, bread. You just grill them. They don't have all the accoutrements like Chicago does. These are not garden on bun dogs. They're just plain dogs with muscle. Very German in style. So here's the story. The story is that a cold day in 1901 at the Polo Grounds, and again, this is not the Polo Grounds of Willie Mays fame. And you've all seen films of the '54 World Series, Willie Mays' famous catch. That center field was, you're in the Polo Grounds right now. That center field was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. And that was built in 1911. So before that, it was wooden parks, but right in the same area, Cook's Love. And it was a cold day, and the vendors were selling ice cream and popcorn. And it was people were shivering, and Harry M. Stevens, who was this English guy, right, who had become a big mogul, was a great friend of the Giants manager,
John McGraw.
John McGraw. They were pals. And so he says to his vendors, you know, people aren't buying anything. Go across the street over there and go to that butcher shop and get some dachshund dogs. And we'll heat them up, and there's a baker there, go get some buns from the baker. And brought them over to the ballpark, had his vendors heat them up, put them in the buns, in their baskets. They had for popcorn, or it's not never clear what they were, whether they're heated boxes or not. They had them, but anyway. And he said, go and sell them. And there's a sports cartoonist sitting in the stands that day, and his name was T.A. Dorgan. Very famous sports cartoonist. Remember the sports cartoonists in those days? We don't have them now, but they did then. And he's a guy who invented a number of American words, slang words, like 23 skidoo, which I use all the time. I don't know you. And many others. So, and he drew this cartoon saying, vendors going, get your red hots, get your red hot dachshund dogs, get your red hot dogs. Right? And thus the name hot dog was given to these sausages. This is complete fabrication. In fact, in 1928, Stevens was interviewed by a New York newspaper, and he said, I never did that. He said, it's not true. But it's a good story, eh? So and it was in magazines, and afterwards, it was in a Conyers magazine article in 1935 by Quentin Reynolds, one of the great journalists, and that's the version that circulated ever since. It's still on the internet. But it has a lot of true things in it, and the incidents of hot dog. The name hot dog goes back to the late to about 1890. We're still finding new first references to it. The latest was 1892, but it's probably the 1880s. The word red hot goes to the 1880s. The association of dogs and sausages goes back to 1840s. There are songs and stories about what went into the butcher's sausages. And the joke was, anytime a German butcher appeared in your town, all the dogs disappeared. I've heard that before about Asian restaurants, right? Yeah. It starts with Germans. There are people drew cartoons all over the place about dogs going into the hot and grinder. And this famous kid song, which I found was from the Boy Scout handbook. 23, and you couldn't overbeak, how could you be so mean to grind up all those doggies in your hot dog machine? You probably sang this as a kid. It's from Boy Scout books, some people. And but people thought that, and they didn't care. You know, it's a joke, and you should see these cartoons. They're really gory, bloodthirsty. They're everywhere. So the natural combination of somebody made a joke name and hot dog, right? And it stuck. It seemed like such a good name. Red hot is a major word, very popular through the century, from the Spanish-American War. Like there'll be a Hot Time in the Old Town tonight, which is so. And there were the Red Hot Mamas who were vaudevillians and such. So red hot dog, and then red hot sauce. It's a natural. So they spread everywhere. As soon as it appears around 1890, it's all over the country. If you look at newspapers, from San Francisco to Armpit, Kansas. And we have, you'd be amazed, the word hot dog is everywhere. And in the South, So hot dogs become a rage and really Americanized. So the truth about the story, the Stevens story, is that hot dogs are popular. They're eaten. They're public food, right? And 1913, the streets of Atlanta were packed with hot dog stands run by Greeks. Greeks went. Germans. It passed out of the hands of Germans to the hands of Greeks, some Italians, and Jews. So the reason, really, because it's the way into the market for people just immigrating. One of the ways, if you don't own a laundry or if you're not a seamstress, then you go into the cheap food business or selling fruits and vegetables in the street. And sausages, this is the way in, it's so cheap. And you can, I met people who did this in the 1920s, or from Swift or Armour and so on. So this is the way up in the world. And sort of this Harry Stevens immigrant story is part of that. That's part of the truth of it. The idea that it's a joke food, but it's desirable, even though you're worried about dogs, is part of that story, right? The popularity of baseball. Baseball was the game from the 1880s, especially 90s, and on to the rise of football, TV, football. That's part of the story. So it's really good, but not true. So hot dogs become specialized in ballparks, and so there are now. They're always commercial, right, to begin with, but they become special. So if there are Dodger dogs in they were never at Ebbets Field. They were just ordinary. They were pretty interesting since we're Dodger fans. Those hot dogs were made by High Grade. It's a company invented in the 1930s by a man named S.S. Slotkin, who was an immigrant and who decided to go into the sausage business. He immigrated to Canada and then came to New York and got into the business and began buying up small sausage companies. There were sausage companies in cities like Chicago. Many were kosher, Jewish. Many were Polish. They're ethnic. Because you remember how sausage, they begin as an ethnic food. When I said Jews got into the business, Maxwell Street. What company was founded on Maxwell Street? What sausage company do you think? Anybody know?
Was it Vienna?
Vienna, right. So the Vienna factory was right on Maxwell and Halstead. And before they moved up to Fullerton, now they've moved to the Pershing Grove. They have a big facility that they got a big break from the city to build. But anyway, it was on Maxwell Street. Maxwell Street's the Jewish quarter, the ghetto. We have lots of pictures saying that, the ghetto. And their sausages, it isn't just that they're high quality sausage, but they're all beef. Being Jews, right, they weren't going to eat pork. Not that Jews didn't sell pork, they did, but that's okay. But it was, and people get the idea that kosher somehow means better. Not just pure, but also taste good. This is completely untrue. They're not pure in any possible way, except some rabbi blesses it. But no, seriously, in fact, they're less tasty than you would think otherwise because of kosher slaughtering. Because in kosher slaughtering, you have to take all the blood out of the meat, so that all that, whatever flavors in that blood and everything is gone. So that's okay, but as long as it sounds good, right? You can sell it. Great. So urban hot dogs, Chicago, New York, to some degree Detroit, and LA because of the immigration from New York to LA, heavy Jewish immigration. Those are all beef sausages, and that's what Vienna is. And we think of a Chicago hot dog, right? It has to be all beef, right? Preferably natural casing, lamb casing. So, what's it say? I digressed.
For sure, I'll be lamb casing.
So it becomes so hot dogs become kind of specialized in the city. So Dodger dogs are all beef hot dogs. They're made by a company called Farmer John, and they're branded that way. Fenway, the hot dogs there are made by a Jewish company, KM, and they're called Fenway Franks. And so wherever in every city, in every place, you have a hot dog which is specific. In Cleveland, they have there are a couple of companies that make the hot dogs, but the mustard is distinctive. It's brown mustard. You must have that hot dog. If you're in Cincinnati, you've got to have Cincinnati chili. And Cincinnati chili is perfectly awful. It is. You've all had it, yeah. You know why it is? You know why it is the way it is?
Chocolate or coffee or
Cinnamon.
okay.
Cincinnati chili was invented by a Bulgarian and then taken up by Greeks. I can't begin to tell you how important Greeks are to the American fast food business. They took up hot dog stands, and they're the first people to put what you think of as a chili sauce on them. Because German and Jewish styles, because they're very similar, Jewish or East European, it's just mustard, onions, maybe sauerkraut in New York, maybe not.
I like the more natural.
Yeah, well, but the Greeks didn't, and once they came over here, I'm talking about 1910, from 1900 to 1910, with the heavy Greek immigration, they're highly entrepreneurial, and they opened hot dog stands because they're getting up into the market, and also fruit and vegetable places. But they took these, and they, in competition with one another, they added something to it. It's called added value, and they put a sauce on it. Now the sauce is, have you ever eaten a Greek moussaka?
Yeah.
You know what that is? Or a pasticcio? You know, well, moussaka particularly, it's a layer. It's like a lasagna, but and it has a bechamel, and it has tomato sauce in it. And the tomato sauce is highly spiced with cinnamon, nutmeg, generally. Might have peppers in it, black pepper, but mostly cinnamon and nutmeg. And it comes from Turkish food originally. But that's what the sauce is. The sauce is a basic Greek sauce. And it comes in many different forms. Because wherever the Greeks were in the part of the country, everybody had their own formula. So in New Jersey, and if you go to Giant Stadium, you're going to find, heaven forbid, and you should, in the Meadowlands, a swamp, you're going to find that style. They're called Texas wieners for no good reason. They're just hot dogs, mostly all beef, with this sauce on it. And there are different kinds of Texas styles, Texas wiener styles, and there's one in Rhode Island which has more meat in it. And so wherever they are, they changed it somewhat, but the basic formula is the same. In Cincinnati, again, it was invented by a Bulgarian named Kraig, and then taken up by Greeks right away. So Skyline chili, which is the most famous, and Empress, chili and others are Greek-owned, and they took that sauce, but it's worse. It's more cinnamon than any other. Toledo, where we are. So it's really interesting, and you find those around the ballparks. So that becomes associated with the baseball team and with the city, but it's always hot dogs. And hot dogs still have this allure. Really interesting. There is much more to say about this. It's only 5 minutes left, and Ellie's going to ring the bell in a second. But do you have any questions about this? There are lots of. There's lots about hot dogs and baseball. They've got much better, by the way, the ballparks. The food has got much better. It used to be when we
Much more expensive.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not expensive.
You bring it back with you to eat the bowl.
Well, this is an interesting thing.
Much less drink a beer.
Well, here's the thing. This has always interested me. It has to do with marketing. How is it when the American League was formed in 1901? You know the story. I'll tell you. They drew more fans right away than the National League, because the National League charged 50 cents for admission. The average wage for a worker, let's say in Chicago, was $450 a year. This is a skilled manual laborer. If you're less, like a hod carrier or something like that, it might be $3.50, $3.95. Now you think about what 50 cents means to somebody who's making $450 a year. The American League charged 25 cents. A nickel then means more, a lot more than it does now. So if I tell you that, but it also has to do with buying power. So if I tell you, you can look at inflation indicators. They're on the web all over the place. Tell you. So if I say, I'm looking at a menu from Toffanetti's. Some of you may remember it's a Chicago food chain, middle-class restaurants. And there's one in New York, Times Square, very famous. He's a really interesting guy, Dario Toffanetti. I was just looking at a 45 menu. And chicken a la king, which was the big, oh. Have you eaten chicken a la king recently? Recently? You didn't? I love chicken a la king. You know, it disappeared from American menus. Some of us remember from the military, from SOS.
That's one thing I never touched.
But anyway, 50 cents. So 50 cents in 1945, you look at an inflation index, there is worth $13.50 now. Hard to believe, it's my lifetime and your lifetime too. But the buying power was less then than it is now. So if 750 would be $7.50 now, but if you look at an actual what the actual cost ought to be, $7.50 ought to be $9. So we're paying less for than 50 cents than they would have. And so when you think about the differences in cost, you say a nickel. But what did a nickel really cost to somebody making $4.50 or $395 a year? So so hot dogs are cheap. They're democratic food. Everybody's the whole mythology of hot dogs, and it's not just that it's true, is that it's democratic food. Go to a hot dog stand in Chicago. By the way, the reason there are hot dog stands in Chicago, something like 2,500 of them or so, more than any of the country, is because of city regulations clamping down on street vendors. And but New York, they have 3,000 vendors and they're just licensed, but New Yorkers in 1909 thought they were okay, and they're there now, selling hot dogs and many other things. If you go into a hot dog stand, everybody downtown, everybody's there. People in working clothes, even hot dogs. You know the hot haute cuisine place, which you have to drive to get there. You walk in there, there are guys in working overalls, posh people dressed up in their business suits, anywhere. So it's the same at the ballpark. So baseball is the great leveling game at the turn century. People stood side by side, and no matter what their income was on the social level, rooting for the same team. It's a spree of the city, and the food they ate is the same. And that's the mythology about hot dogs. It is this American democratic food. It's the importance of it. Okay, if you have any questions.
Very well done.
Okay, I have these books if you want to buy one. I got them from the publisher for $12, but if you don't, it's okay. You can get them on Amazon. They're cheap. And another one I wrote called Hot Dog Global History, which is cheap too. So, okay.
Thank you.